Today we're going to talk about the Payroll Project Champion. So this is a super important role that we are asking every agency across the enterprise to have this role, or if you're like a DAS represented agency, then you may not need your own, but you're going to be represented with a Payroll Project Champion. And so we have the entire team, at least most of the team on the call. Everyone on the team is going to have a direct contact to the different agencies. So you have a direct line to our project team. And we'll go over a lot more of that stuff on our official Payroll Project Champion kickoff, which we have scheduled for February 10th. After this call, I will send an invite to everyone who was on this call so that you can have that on your calendars. And if you decide that this maybe isn't the role for you, then you can just decline that meeting. Or if you figure out someone else within your agency or a couple other people in your agency should fill this role, then you can forward that invite onto them. I guess I should introduce myself, sorry. My name is Karis Alston. I'm the Organizational Change Management Lead for the Payroll and Time Tracking Replacement Project. So I'm going to talk to you today about the role of the Payroll Project Champion. We'll get into a little bit about the project itself. And we have lots of payroll experts on the call who can help answer any of your questions. So we have 2 hours set aside for this. We haven't actually used the 2 hours in the previous sessions, but it doesn't mean that we won't use it today. This is our biggest group. And like I said, that kickoff message just went out, so your agency may be having lots of questions that you want to address here. So anyway, we have until 3. We'll talk about the role for about an hour, and then we have about an hour to go through questions if you should need or want that. Let's get started. If you could move to the next slide for me, please. Okay, so what is a Payroll Project Champion and why do we have this role? I kind of alluded that it is like the agency representative and main contact for the project. So, and it's literally critical, like essential to your agency being successful with this change. So it is a very important role. More than one person can serve as a Payroll Project Champion for your agency, and I'll get a little bit more into that as we move on. So I think the best way to kind of explain this, for those of you who were part of the Workday HCM implementation, there was a role with that project that was called the ARC, or the Agency Readiness Contact. And that person kind of served in a very similar way that this Payroll Project Champion will, but they were more in like the HR realm. This person is going to be more in the payroll realm. So we'll get into that a little bit more as we keep going. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so some of the responsibilities. So we're going to have like organizational change management specific responsibilities, and then more of like payroll type responsibilities. So the OCM, or organizational change management, you'll hear me call it OCM, serving as the main project contact, right, for our team. You're going to work directly with your agency project sponsor. So that's something else that we're going to talk about today. We strongly recommend, especially the larger agencies, that you have an internal project team for this project, and that you have an internal sponsor. So one of the biggest, in fact, the biggest reason that changes fail is lack of sponsorship. And so we really want to try to prevent that from happening for your agency. So we do have, the enterprise co-sponsors. We have Brian DeForest and Nakia Daniels. I think I should know that, I'm sorry. But those are our project sponsor and co-sponsor at the enterprise level, but we really want to have a sponsorship level within each of the different agencies so that your employees can see, whomever it is, if it's the payroll manager or a deputy director or whomever in your agency actually sponsoring this project for them. We want this Payroll Project Champion to provide feedback to our team And we actually do want to hear all the feedback. We have already gotten some today. People are not holding back, which is fine. We need to know what people are thinking and what their concerns are so that we can address them. So whatever you're hearing in your agency, good, bad, ugly, whatever is worse than ugly, like we want to hear all of it. We're going to have Payroll Project Champion meetings every, yes, Michelle, we do want the negative and the positive. Unless I guess the negative is like literally not helpful at all and it's just being cruel, then maybe not. But how do we want to receive the feedback? So we have a payroll project email, which I'm just going to ask someone on my team to put that in the chat for me, that you can send all your questions to. Thank you, Jerry. So we want to hear it that way, but also there's going to be a couple other ways that you can provide feedback, and one of them is with your project contact. So like I said, each agency, Payroll Project Champion or champions, is going to have a direct contact on our project team. And you guys are going to meet at least once a month, but maybe more depending on what you all decide and what you feel comfortable with and how often you would like to meet. And so that is another place where you can get information and share feedback and that kind of thing. So that's another way that we can receive feedback. Employees actually are just sending emails to that osps.workday mailbox as well. So you may not need to send us feedback because they already are. But those are some different ways that you can send us the feedback. And so the Payroll Project Champion meetings, we're going to have them every 2 weeks starting in February. So we're going to have a kickoff meeting on the 10th. And that's where, you know, this is just kind of an overview, a deep overview of what the role is. So by being here, you're not, like, I'm not expecting that you are the payroll project champion for your agency. You might be, and that's totally fine. But after this webinar, you might realize that this isn't the role for you, or that someone else would better serve in this role. So just by being here doesn't mean that you have to become the payroll project champion. The meeting on the 10th, that's where the like dedicated, identified, committed payroll project champions, that is going to be our kickoff meeting. We're going to go for about 2 hours, talk in depth about the project, more again on the time commitments. We'll talk about who your direct contacts are with the project. We'll hear from some of our sponsors. So that's the first big meeting. And then every 2 weeks after that, so I believe it's the second and fourth Wednesday of every month, we're going to meet for about an hour and a half. And we'll talk about project specific things. And I'm sorry, if you guys could all mute yourself, that would be really awesome. I'm getting some feedback and I can't hear myself think. We're going to go through some training, some organizational change management training during those meetings, as well as do project specific updates and communication updates and stuff like that. So if you serve in this role, whoever ends up serving in this role, we definitely need them to participate in these meetings. And I mean, if you're gone, I mean, that happens, that's not a big deal, but we would ask that you would please send someone or a couple people in your place, just so that we have that constant stream of communication and contact with you. And then another thing is helping to identify and manage resistance to the project. So we're anticipating a lot of resistance to this project, mostly because people resist change. It's not very comfortable when we're asked to change, especially if we don't understand why we're being asked to change, and even more so when it involves our pay. So it's natural that we're going to get resistance, and so we're going to be talking about how we can help identify and manage that in your agency. So Jackie, the invites have not gone out for those meetings yet. The kickoff meeting, there have been invites to those, to that first kickoff meeting on the 10th for the attendees of the previous webinars. And as soon as this one ends, then when I get the complete list of everyone who attended, I'll send an invite for that kickoff. And the reason that the other invites have not gone out yet is that, as I mentioned, just because you're here today doesn't mean you're necessarily that you have to serve in that PPC role. So we're asking, one of the action items, which I'll send in an email after this, is that you let us know who your payroll project champion or champions are for your agency by February 1st. That way we can send the invites out to those people so that we're not spamming, a couple hundred people with invites that they may not need to attend those meetings. Move your phone, we can hear it vibrate. Okay, sorry. Okay. So that's the organizational change management piece of it. More toward the agency resource related. It's really, really important that whoever serves in this role has a strong understanding of the current payroll processes for your agency. We need them to understand how this change is going to impact like finance, HR, IT, payroll, as well as employees and managers. We are going to ask this payroll project champion to attend system trainings and demos and testing, as well as either provide or help coordinate the training effort within your agency. So I know this sounds like a ton of responsibilities, and that's because it is. So I do also recommend that if in any way possible for your agency, maybe have 2 people serve in this role, maybe have someone who is kind of that payroll expert, and then also try to get someone from your agency who does more like organizational development or organizational change or communications or something. And you both could kind of tag team this so that you have both the technical and the people side of the change covered. So that is an option. I know it may not be feasible, but if it is, that's definitely a way to kind of combat all of these responsibilities. Karis, I had an employee say your YouTube video made sense. Oh, great. Yay. That makes me happy. Okay, so who would make an ideal payroll project champion? You may have already seen, likely you have seen if you are here, we sent out a brochure several weeks ago that kind of talked about what we were looking for. But really, it's very important that this person actually supports the project and is committed to its success. That's very important in a payroll project champion. Obviously, we talked a lot about that they we really need this person to understand the agency payroll processes or can learn like super quickly. So like, for example, I would not be one of those people. Like that is just not how my brain works. Like you can ask anyone on the payroll project team right now that I would definitely be serving from like the people side and not the payroll side. So we want this person to be well respected and trusted within your agency, or at least not disrespected, right? So we don't want them to have like a negative reputation. This person, we would really like for them to be able to motivate and influence their coworkers and their peers. As I said, this change is big and kind of scary for a lot of people. It involves pay, which is kind of scary for most people. So being able to influence their peers, work well with others, communicate, listen with empathy, very, very important. And then that last one, so radiates positivity and realistic optimism. What I mean by that is I will never ask anyone on this project or any project to run out and just like sing only praises about the change. That's ridiculous, right? There are hard things about change, and I want us to be upfront about that with people. If we are only overly ridiculously optimistic all the time, then people will not trust us. So I believe in being like honest about the difficulty that comes with change. But I also think that we can spin that, right, and be positive and optimistic about it. So that's what I mean by that. I don't want anyone to think that like, oh, Karis is asking me to lie about the project. I will literally never ask you to do that ever. So that's what I mean by that. Okay, Jim says, I'm already an agency rep for the Workday payroll project as a PM for the effort to support the project. Is this role different? Already an agency rep. I don't know.
Karis.
Yeah.
He's a PM for DEQ, and the role he plays could be same as a payroll project champion, but Jim, I would say that you really need to understand your agency's payroll and time tracking needs, and be able to speak on behalf of the agency to answer, payroll and time tracking related questions as well.
Okay, but it's also mainly for change management though too, is what I'm thinking here now.
There's quite a bit of change management involved in this role as well. So yes.
Yeah. Right. Okay. All right. Thank you, Seth.
Yep. You're still on mute.
I don't even remember muting myself. That's pretty funny. Someone else must have done that. Okay, so what's in it for the champion? Why would you want to participate in this role? So a lot of people think that money is the #1 motivator, but luckily that's not true. And actually it's like having a sense of purpose is the #1 motivator, which is great since I can't actually pay you more, even though I would love to. So the what's in it is a lot of intrinsic reasons. So you'll get the opportunity to make sure that the project is a success for your agency. So you're going to help your entire agency, which is awesome. You are going to get a lot of advanced knowledge of project information and key dates associated with the project. So that's always fun. At least for me, I'm a very anxious person, so I like to know what's happening immediately. So that's a bonus. You'll get skills development in leading change, working with project teams and sponsors. That may be something that is new for you, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Developing and disseminating communications, and like I've already mentioned, that managing and mitigating resistance. You get recognition and acknowledgement from your own agency leadership as well as DAS leadership, and then the satisfaction of helping others navigate change successfully. So those are some of the perks that come with participating as a payroll project champion. So what OCM training? I have mentioned this a couple times that you're going to get some OCM training. And again, OCM is organizational change management, which is the people side of change. So in those every 2 weeks for probably February to May-ish, we're going to talk about things like what OCM is. Why do we even have it on a project? How does it help with project success? That kind of thing. We're going to talk a lot about sponsorship because again, that's vital to the success of this project within your agency. We'll talk about how we communicate during change. There's very strategic ways to communicate during change. So we'll talk about that and we'll kind of help you do that for your own agency. We'll go through empathic listening, which is the listening to understand what's being said. So that's really important, especially when we're talking to employees who are upset. Resistance management. Giving and receiving feedback, super important, because like I said, you may get feedback that is not very kind. So we'll talk about how to receive feedback as well as how to give feedback, both to those employees and to us, although I'm not as concerned about how you give the feedback to us. We can take it, I think. We'll talk about resiliency. Resiliency is super, super, super important. And the more I think about it, the more I really want to help you also help your agencies with this topic. A lot of times we wait until it's too late to talk about resiliency. We wait till we're exhausted and they're like, oh, we should do a resiliency training. And it's like, yeah, we should have done this 6 months ago. So we'll talk a lot about that. We'll talk about OCM assessments and some plans that we use and any other additional trainings as needed or desired. So Maggie, what is the timeline for these trainings? So the kickoff meeting is February 10th, and then every 2 weeks following that, so it's the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month, the meetings are going to be from 1 to 2:30. And like I said earlier, once we know for certain who all of the payroll project champions are, then we'll start forwarding those invites out. But everyone on this call is at least going to get the invite to that kickoff meeting. I'll mention it later, but I'll mention it now. That kickoff meeting, pretty much anyone that you would like to have attend that can. So the Payroll Project Champion obviously should definitely attend, but if that person's manager wants to attend in support, that's awesome. If your agency sponsor wants to attend in support, that's awesome. So that one's kind of that's probably going to be a very big meeting. And then the meetings following will be more for just those Payroll Project Champions. These trainings are embedded. Yes, they are. So we'll probably do about 50-ish minutes of training, and then some time for questions on the training. And then every one of those bi-weekly, I can never get that right, meetings that happen every 2 weeks, we're going to do project updates as well. So talk specifically about what's going on with the project, where we are with regards to timelines, communications, updates, etc. And then on top of those meetings, like I said, you will meet with your project contact person as well. Is my phone still making noise? Sorry. So what does training look like? Are they interactive and immersive? Yeah. So they definitely are when they're in person. I am a freaking hoot when I train in person. But now that we have to do this virtually, it's harder to be a hoot virtually, but I do try. They are as immersive and interactive as possible. I have a PowerPoint that I go through, and then sometimes, there's like a little bit, I don't know if we've done prep work. Like I can tell you for the resiliency one, there will be a podcast that I want you, is it a podcast? It's either a podcast or a little video that I'll ask you to watch like in preparation for it. I'm hoping that everyone who attends will put their face up, because talking to tiny little bubbles with your little initials is like the saddest thing ever for a trainer. So hopefully that will help with that interactive, immersive part. My guess is we're going to have at least 40, maybe more Payroll Project Champions. So that will make it a little bit more difficult with like having a conversation. We are going to use the breakout sessions though, so that you can break out and, go through different, training scenarios with other people. So I don't know if you've done any sort of like online virtual training in the last 10 months or so, it will be similar, but I will really try to make it as fun as possible. So that's all I can say about that. I don't know. Maybe Seth can jump on and just say how much fun we had doing the trainings in December.
Yeah, I can jump in here. I would say that. Hey, Karis, can you mute?
Yes.
Thank you. So yeah, I mean, online trainings are as immersive and interactive as the participants make it, right? So it could be hard in certain environments, but so far with our team, as we've done a lot of team builders, stuff like that, they've been really good. And for those who haven't been to a Karis training, you are in for a special treat. So she delivers, and she brings it every time she delivers her training. So the content and how it's delivered will be great. It's really up to each individual to bring what they have into the virtual environment. It's not going to be easy per se, but like anything, whatever you bring into it is what you'll get out of it too. So.
Thanks, Seth. I was worried it was going to be listening to someone read their PowerPoint. So, I mean, I will have a PowerPoint and I will read from it, but there will be a lot more than just that, because I agree that is the worst, even though that's what I'm doing to you guys right now. Okay, so time commitment for this role. Okay, it's going to vary a lot depending on the phase of the project that we're in. And I'm going to let Seth talk a lot on this slide. I will say that in the beginning, we're just kind of easing you in a little bit. Like I said, the 5 to 10 hours per month with those OCM trainings and meetings. A lot of what I'm doing, at least what I hope to do, right, is kind of build our network, because even though you're going to have your, project contact person that you can lean on, I'm also like really hoping that we're all going to become best friends and we can like lean on each other and you can reach out to each other for some, if there are issues or things that you need help with regarding the project. So that's the first part. And then I'm going to let Seth take over the rest of this.
Thanks. So yeah, I think, for us time commitment, this is a big ask for, agencies to give up this resource, right? Because as we kind of build up to through February through May, we're doing just a lot of just prep work in order to get yourself and your agency prepared for the first change. We have planned for August 2021, right? And then as you get closer into June through September, it's going to be, again, more trainings, more communications, and then really support, we want to provide to be able to help you with, working through scenarios, questions, problems, areas that you need some guidance, advice in. That's really the key during that time frame is how do we get people transition from salary to hourly, through in August and in September. And then when we look at October through January, that's end-to-end testing. So one thing that we, was a struggle with the HCM project was getting people into the environment, getting people used to training through the business processes, and so with HCM already up and running, we're just bringing time and payroll into this environment, so that way ideally all the structure for how people are paid is already there, right? So it's really going to be focused on the time tracking piece, but then also bring payroll partners into that area as well to start going through business processes we see for payroll partners. So it's one of those where the level of commitment and I see your question there, Kat, about how many employees makes up the difference between larger and smaller. So it's really kind of depends on one, your agency's time tracking payroll needs, the complexity of time tracking when it comes to your agency. Because depending on where you're at, for instance, forestry may not necessarily be a large agency per se, but with their firefighters and seasonals and the fact they do a lot of federal tracking and projects, stuff like that's complex, so we want people to be engaged in that time frame. We want people to come in to help us through test scenarios, through scripts. The end-to-end is really a matter of getting in and pushing the system to the limit and making sure that what's been configured is going to actually work. We want to make tweaks and changes, and by the time we get to the end-to-end at the end of it, we want to have that finished product. We want to be able to have something that's we know going forward it's going to look like this in production. And then February, March, we'll be doing some parallel testing during that time, and then really enhancing on that training that we've really started working on end to end, and even before that as a project team. One area that was a real struggle for payroll partners with HCM was training, right? So for that, it's key for the project team to deliver training to show the current versus future state, to be able to walk through, hey, how do you do a pay advance? Hey, what does it look like to be able to do a manual check request? Hey, what happens when I get these requests in my inbox in Workday? What do I do with that stuff? So those type of things we need to walk through and help the payroll partners take those business processes all the way through, right? Let's see, Kelly, I see your question. Do you have a list of PPCs for ODF currently? So we do, and I believe it's Melee from Forestry. Let's see, and then of course, once we get to April through June, that's going to be the user acceptance testing, UAT, and then of course, training deployment. So, it's a big ask because, the time commitment from basically starting from, October on is upwards of 40 hours, depending on your agency, right? So this person, either is going to have a support team helping with that time commitment, or they're going to be, really dedicated to this project, which is what we want, and it's not up to us, and we can't tell people, you have to do this, but considering the change and considering the, what we're going to move from to moving to, it's a big cultural mindset that has to be adjusted. The habits and the way we go about things now is going to be completely different when we go to Workday. Are we going to be able to accomplish the same sort of everything that we have done? Yes. Is it going to? It's just going to be the steps and the process we go through. The wording itself is just going to be different, right? So it's learning all these different the vocabulary and the different processes that we go through. It can just be one of those things where it's just going to take some time, and that's why the more you can commit to this, and the more we want you involved at the earlier stage of testing. We can either one help you through that process, and also be able to show you that, hey, this process that we used to do this way, you only have to do this step of it, and the rest of it is actually automated. So, and I agree, Michelle, we can start utilizing the system with the capabilities of making it better, right? To be able to hopefully streamline some of the things we do, for payroll partners, especially for their regular employee. This change is just going to hurt no matter what, right? This change is just one of those things where I have to learn something new. I have to enter in time this way, and while we can say all we want to be able to say it's going to be easy, going to be great, it's not going to be easy for anybody, right? Because change is hard, and that's why we want you to be involved. And that level of commitment for you as a person, as a payroll champion, is you're going to have to work with your managers, because this time commitment is going to take away from your regular duties. So the idea behind this role is that we want someone who has the knowledge and understanding of what they do at their agency, and that being committed to this means that your regular duties are going to have to be covered by others. Is that something we can tell you that you have to do? No, we're asking you to do this. So you really need to go back and work with your agency leadership, your manager, to be able to talk about what this role means, talk about the commitment your agency wants to have towards this project, and that the more you can talk about this and what this will mean, and ideally we've given you kind of an understanding of, this is the general idea of the time commitment, but it can be different. For someone like Michelle at DHS, for her, she's got over 14,000 employees that she's going to have to manage this for. Will she have an army dedicated towards this project? Absolutely. But her full-time job, her regular job, she's going to have to do already a lot of work with her team and her management team to be able to decide, what sort of things are going to have to shift to others as well. So it's one of those where it's something that, again, we can't mandate for anybody to do this, but we're letting you know now the best of our ability of what this looks like and the time commitment needed towards this. Okay, looks like Brian has a general question. In the future, will people be notified via email if they have a task in Workday? Example, supervisors that need to approve something, or even a payroll person that has a task. I do go in Workday several times a day. So yeah, ideally, again, with Workday, it's about the business process, and the way people will be notified things will be through Workday. So whether that changes of having more emails sent to their Outlook, that's not something I could really answer right now. Really, what we're wanting, what we're pushing for, is people need to log into Workday. Workday is going to be your source for, it's currently your source for HR information, which contains all your salary information, and it will be your information, your source for soon to be your source for time tracking, leave, and you're actually be able to see some of the benefits, PEB benefits in there as well. So how's that? Next slide.
Yes, but there is another question that Chantel asked. Will our current DAS payroll contact be the same for this project? So I think that's different than the like contact on our project team, correct? Is that what she's asking?
So Chantel, are you referring to who you or your agency reaches out to for DAS payroll questions? So as far as your current payroll needs, DAS payroll will, whoever you contact now will be the same contact. As far as the project goes, it's Carrie Bevere and Alana Perry who are actually the payroll champions for DAS. So they are the payroll champions for not only DAS but client agencies. Except for, I believe, DCBS and DOR will have their own project champions. But as far as any of the smaller boards and commissions and agencies, if you have questions related to the project, reach out to Carrie Bevere or Alana Perry. Does that help?
Thank you, Seth. Okay, so training for this project. Okay, so our project team, our DAS project team, is going to train and provide resources and training materials to our payroll partners, to agency trainers, which may be you, it may be someone within your agency, so kind of train the trainer there. And then we're also going to put together an enterprise-wide foundational training that's going to be online that everyone across the enterprise will take. I think we're actually hoping that it is like a mandated training so that everyone gets it. And then the agency trainers, so you or people within your agency, we're asking you guys to help provide training to your own employees and managers within your agency. And so the reason for that, our team is about 13 people right now. We're hiring 4 additional trainers as we get closer to that part of the project. So even if, you know, all 17 of us were training 40,000 people, that's not a great ratio. So we definitely need help from all of you and the trainers within your agencies to make sure that employees across the enterprise understand how to use the Workday time tracking system. And we're going to talk a lot about this, especially during those PPC meetings, because we want to do this with you guys. We want to help build the training. If there are certain things, you know, certain types of time cards or whatever, people in your agency who maybe have 24-hour shifts, or, you know, they're out on the roads or they're out fighting fire and stuff like that, like, we want to make sure that we're getting those people trained as well. So we want to build this. This is a very collaborative process. So we're going to be talking a lot about that in the coming months. And the next 2 slides, just because I cannot do a presentation without a meme, just that this role should not be taken lightly. It's kind of a big deal, but really, it's like a really big deal. I have to throw humor. That's how I like deflect big emotions, and me asking this amount of time from you guys like invokes a lot of scary emotions for me. So this is my way of deflecting that with humor. So anyway, we'll keep going, but so how are you guys going to be supported? So I've talked a lot about the dedicated project contact. So anytime that you need to get a hold of that person, right, you have a contact on the project team who can help answer questions. They've all been trained, like I said, with the organizational change management, and everyone pretty much on the team except me has like extensive payroll knowledge, but don't worry, none of you, I'm not the direct contact for any of you guys for that very reason. So your direct contact will have a lot of payroll knowledge, as well as the OCM knowledge. So you should be able to get anything that you need from them. Like I already mentioned, this network of champions, so each other, the meetings that I already talked about, we are still planning some of our like communication cadences and like how we want to get communications out, but we have newsletters, emails, video updates, webinars, all of that is in the works, in the plan, to keep you guys informed. And then, whenever we need to, and especially whenever you tell us we need to, like when your employees are very confused about something, we can very quickly create fact sheets, we can provide demos, we can add to our FAQs, we can provide talking points for you, for any other PPCs, for your sponsors, for your managers, and help with any suggested communications. Like I take this role very seriously. I really feel like my job is to make this as easy as possible on all of you PPCs so that you can help make this as easy as possible for your employees. So I have no vacations planned until like December. So you can reach out to me anytime. Right now I have 3 phone numbers, a personal and 2 works. I have many email addresses. Like I am here if you need help. So please don't feel like that we're just going to ask you to do this and then feed you to the wolves. Like I would never do that to you. We're all going to go be fed to the wolves together. We're in this together. So, okay. So project contact meetings. I've already talked about this a lot, but at a minimum, we would like you to meet with your specific project contact at least once a month for about an hour. And you and your project contact can decide what you talk about, but some suggestions would be project updates, obviously. If you within your agency have any specific changes coming, and so, maybe you have a communication going out just within your agency about an agency change, and we're getting ready to send a big enterprise communication, like we want to know that so that we can help like coordinate those messages. Communications, so talking about what communications are coming or what communications have already gone out and how your employees have reacted to those communications. We'll spend a lot of time doing sponsorship engagement. So we're gonna, be checking in with you to see how your sponsor is doing. And in fact, you can invite your sponsor to these meetings with your project contact. You could invite your whole project team if you want. That's again, something that you can kind of figure out with your contact when you have that first meeting, which will be a little bit later in February. Any questions or concerns that you have, again, any feedback, and then if you have project team updates that you would like to share with us, then we would love to hear that as well. So those are just some of the topics that could be included, but again, it's like super customizable. You can talk about whatever you need to talk about for your agency. So those are those contact meetings. Okay, so we were asked to provide an example of the hierarchy of payroll project champions within an agency, because in case you haven't noticed, it's literally not possible for one person to do this for your entire agency, especially if you're in one of those larger agencies. It's just not possible. We want you to get help from other people within your agency. And so we're going to kind of show on the next slide what we mean by that. So we use the example of DAS here. So we have 2 main payroll project champions from within shared financial services. So this is the DAS like org chart, right? And it's kind of broken out into 3 main buckets or branches or offices. So we have the chief financial office, the human resource office, and the administrative office. And so it's within that administrative office that we're going to have the 2 main PPCs. And when I say main PPCs, I mean the people who will attend those PPC meetings every 2 weeks and who are like the contact for the agency. On the next slide, what we are hoping, and again, this is like super ideal. We know that this is not going to be feasible for everyone, but we wanted to provide that idealistic view. So in that first box on the left, we have our DAS internal payroll time tracking project team. And your direct project contact, are the same people. And then the 2 payroll project champions from within SFS, right? So that's the contact between the project and the agency, okay? And then we would ask that whatever other branches or divisions or offices that you have within your agency, you have a contact that represents that division, right? So the chief financial office. So one of the 2 PPCs in the SFS is going to have a contact to someone within the chief financial office. Then we're going to ask that that person has a contact within each of those like branches, right? So someone within budget, someone within capital planning, within statewide accounting, audit, and then business services. So that, like, the way that I describe this, which never sounds good, but it's how it makes sense in my head, is like a pyramid scheme of payroll project champions, right? So like there's the one that meets with our team and gets all of the information straight from the horse's mouth, quote unquote, and then like cascades that information down to the next level, who then cascades that information down to the next level, right? And you might have, maybe you go back to your agency and you have all of those people in one meeting every month. That's up to you guys how you want to handle that, and we can help support that if you want. But we really want you to try to have contacts from every part of your agency, so that no one is left out in hearing information. And it's the same for, you know, the CHRO and the everyone else within the administrative office. So just so you guys know, here for DAS, what we're doing within the CHRO, we are having our Workday ARC serve as that person. We would highly recommend that whoever your agency Workday agency readiness contact from the previous Workday implementation, that person is probably, hopefully, still active because they're going through the learning management system replacement change right now. And so we would ask that you keep that ARC like on your internal project team, or at least that you're working with that person for all, you know, Workday related information. And so that's who our person is going to be for the CHRO. And then that person is then going to kind of represent everyone else within the CHRO. So are there any questions, or Seth, do you want to do any additional explaining here that I might have missed?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's really important for, you know, each agency, you know, the person needs to be familiar with their overall kind of structure as an agency, and you know, the key with that is, you know, identify those programs that you know are going to struggle with this change, right? And then really develop that habit of connecting with someone within that program that you can get to, you know, garner their support and be a part of the change as well. You know, it's one of those where every single program across every single agency, it's not going to be something that happens, right? As you know, Karis knows from her experience through ODOT and their timekeeping system, right? It's difficult to get that support across the whole agency, but you know, this is why, you know, you start talking about now. You start introducing to agency leadership. You start, you know, working on a plan to be able to identify what does a support team look like within your agency, you know, and above all, it's just a matter of making sure that communication flows down to all those different programs, and that they're, you know, people are aware of, like, okay, I'm a resource to be able to help answer questions, and that ultimately when stuff comes to you as a payroll project champion, is know that we on the project team, that if you need help with a question, if you need help with how to move forward with something, then please reach out to us. So Barbara, I see your question there. You're a DAS client agency. Would we still have a PPC at the agency level as well for the timekeeping piece and communication with the agency, for example? So, you know, Barbara, it's really up to you to, I talk with Carrie and Alana at DAS Payroll, just to really understand what your agency is going to want and need, you know, for support for this project. I think as long as you are connecting with Alana and Carrie from DAS Payroll on a regular basis, and making sure communication is being funneled through PUC, then, you know, again, I would leave it up to you. You know, if your agency really believes you need a payroll project champion, then I would, again, just really work with Carrie and Alana to see what would you know, make sense for you guys.
Thank you, Seth. And Michelle, I see your message there that you're CCing the OSPS email box. That's awesome. Yes, that does give us another way to receive feedback. So thank you for that. And yes, any questions that you guys feel like should be addressed in the FAQ, like we want to hear those as well. So, okay, I think we just have 2 more slides. So we have talked a little bit about this internal project team that we're kind of recommending, especially for those larger agencies that Seth kind of talked about earlier. And so this is kind of like at a minimum. So actually, before I get into this, let's answer this question from Kat. So has consideration been given to some outside support? I have concerns for small agencies like my own with the expectations. So Seth, I don't know if you want to tackle that.
Yeah, Kat, I would say that, I would again probably reach out to DAS, and we can have a discussion with the DAS as well. So the concern is always around smaller agencies being able to provide a way to be able to have support for a project, but while making sure that the duties done by one particular person, be able to take this on it, and in addition to the regular duties, is difficult to maintain at a small agency. So, Kat, I think we should probably have further discussions about that.
Thanks, Seth. Okay, so kind of the skeleton project team that we're recommending for internal agencies would obviously be that executive sponsor, which I've talked a little bit about, the importance of that role. And if you need help, like figuring out who that person should be for your agency, that's also something that we're totally happy to help with. So just let us know. A project manager, obviously this PPC role, the Payroll Project Champion. And then, so I kind of talked about this earlier, that if you're able to have, this payroll project champion or payroll SME or subject matter expert, and you're able to get like an OCM person or a communications person or someone who does more of that like people-y organizational development type stuff within your agency, that would be awesome if you could have one of both of those. The workday readiness contact or the agency readiness contact, the finance SME, just so that there's someone on the team who understands like all of the impacts to finance, and then same thing for a technical SME. So this is like kind of our recommended project team. You may find that you want additional people on the team, or you don't need as many here, but this is kind of our like bare minimum recommendation. And again, we're happy to, kind of go over this. We could even go over this. Yes, the technical SME is an IT person, thanks. But this is also something that we could talk about like in the Payroll Project Champion webinars or the trainings, if that's something that enough people feel they could benefit from, just kind of talking about like their internal setup. We can do that as well. So that's the internal team. And then the last thing is just the next steps, which again, I feel like I've talked about so many times, but so the one-on-one meetings, starting with your payroll project contact. So that's going to happen in February after that kickoff message. And during that kickoff message, we'll make sure that you leave knowing who your payroll project contact person is, so that you can start setting those meetings up. So you'll meet with that person. If there's any other questions that you have, making sure that you're clear on what we're going to be asking of you in this role, making sure that you have the support from your own agency, and that you have the time for this role. And then the PPC meetings officially kick off, like I said, on the 10th, and then the second and third Wednesday of every month from 1 to 2:30. So after we get through more questions, if there are more questions, I will send an email that kind of recaps some of the action items that I'm asking from you. The main one being that we have the list of either the name or names of the Payroll Project Champions who are going to represent your agency by February 1st. so that we can start sending out invites for those meetings. Everyone on this call is going to get invited to that kickoff PPC meeting. And I'm also going to include this PowerPoint deck so that you could, if you need to go share it with people in your agency who you think would be the PPC, I'll include that. And I can also include the brochure if you'd like. So yes, I will definitely share the PowerPoint, Lisa. What else? Is it too early for HR departments to change employees from salary to hourly? Seth?
Yeah, Brian, we're talking with CHRO policy about, what that might look like. But, I would hold off for now. We still need to work through some more details on that.
Okay, so that concludes my 59 minutes of talking.